The first time I saw Julian, he was a silhouette against the neon glow of a Seattle rooftop bar, his laugh cutting through the hum of strangers like a blade. I was 24, fresh out of a breakup that left me raw, and I'd come to this overpriced place to drown my thoughts in overpriced drinks. But then he turned, caught my eye, and asked me for a drink, and my whole world tilted. It wasn't just his looks, though God knows they didn't hurt. Sharp cheekbones, hazel eyes that seemed to see through me, and a smile that felt like a secret he was dying to share. No, it was the way he moved, like he owned the air around him, like he could make the chaos of the bar bend to his will. I was nobody in that moment, just Ethan, a graphic designer with a chipped front tooth and a tendency to overthink everything. But when Julian leaned against the bar and said, "You look like you need a whiskey more than I do," I felt like someone worth noticing. "Ethan," I said, shaking his hand, my palm clammy against his steady grip. His name rolled off his tongue like it was meant to be said in a low, warm drawl. Julian. He was a photographer, he told me. Freelance. Always chasing the next shot. The next story. We talked about nothing important: music, the city, the way the rain here never really stops, but every word felt like it was building something. By the time he suggested we grab a table away from the crowd, I was already hooked, my heart pounding like it hadn't in months. The rooftop was alive with fairy lights and the clink of glasses, the Puget Sound shimmering in the distance. Julian sat across from me, his knee brushing mine under the table, and I couldn't tell if it was an accident. He had this way of looking at you, not just at you, but into you, like he was peeling back layers you didn't even know you had. "So, Ethan," he said, swirling his drink, "what's the story you're not telling me?" I laughed, nervous, and mumbled something about my ex, about how I'd been trying to find myself, or some cliche like that. But Julian didn't let it slide. He leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Come on. There's more to you than that. What's the real stuff? The stuff that keeps you up at night?" I froze. Nobody had ever asked me that. Not like that. My ex, Connor, had been all about surface dates, fights, breakup texts that felt like they were written by a robot. But Julian, he was different. Dangerous. Maybe. I took a sip of my whiskey, the burn grounding me, and said, "I don't know. I guess I'm scared I'll never figure out who I'm supposed to be." His eyes softened, but he didn't look away. "Maybe you're not supposed to be anything," he said. "Maybe you just are." And then he moved closer. Not a lot, just enough for his shoulder to graze mine, for the heat of him to make my skin prickle. My whole body forgot how to say no. I didn't know what was happening, didn't know if I was ready for it, but I knew I didn't want it to stop. The night blurred after that. We talked until the bar started emptying out, until the staff began stacking chairs and the city lights were all that kept us company. Julian told me about growing up in a small town in Oregon, where being openly bisexual meant whispers and sideways glances. He'd left at 18, chasing freedom, chasing himself. I told him about my family in Tacoma, how my mom still asked if I was sure about being gay, how my dad just changed the subject. It was the kind of conversation that felt like undressing slow, vulnerable, terrifying. When he suggested we walk to his place for a coffee, I said yes before I could overthink it. His apartment was a few blocks away, a small loft with exposed brick and photos pinned to every wall, black and white shots of strangers, cityscapes, a single rose caught in the rain. "These are incredible," I said, tracing the edge of a frame. "Thanks," he said, stepping closer. "But you're dodging my question." "What?" I turned, confused, and found him inches away, his breath warm against my cheek. "What do you want, Ethan?" His voice was low, almost a whisper. "Not what you're supposed to want." What do you want? I didn't have an answer. Or maybe I did, but it was too big, too raw to say out loud. My heart was a drum in my chest, and Julian was so close now, his hand brushing my arm, his eyes searching mine. I wanted to kiss him. I wanted to run. I wanted everything and nothing all at once. And then he kissed me. It wasn't soft or tentative, it was hungry, like he'd been waiting for this as long as I had. My hands found his waist, pulling him closer, and for the first time in months, I wasn't thinking about Connor or my mom or the mess of my life. I was just there, with Julian, in a moment that felt like it could burn the world down. When we pulled apart, breathless, he rested his forehead against mine. "Stay?" he said. Not a question, not a demand, just a word that held everything. I stayed. The next morning, sunlight spilled through Julian's loft windows, painting the floor in gold. I woke up tangled in his sheets, his arm draped over my waist, and for a moment, I thought I'd dreamed it all. But then he stirred, mumbling something about coffee, and the reality hit me. I'd spent the night with a man I barely knew, and it felt like the most honest thing I'd ever done. We didn't talk about it. Not really. Over coffee, Julian told me about a shoot he had that afternoon, a local band, some gritty alley downtown. "Come with me," he said, like it was the most natural thing in the world. I hesitated. I had work, a deadline for a client's logo, but the thought of going back to my tiny apartment, to the silence of my own head, was unbearable. So I said yes. The shoot was chaos in the best way. Julian moved through the alley like he was directing a movie, his camera an extension of himself. The band, a group of scrappy 20-somethings with dyed hair and ripped jeans, loved him. I watched from the sidelines, sketching in my notebook, stealing glances at him. Every so often, he'd look over and wink, and my stomach would flip like I was a teenager again. Afterward, we grabbed burgers at a diner, grease staining our fingers as we talked about everything: his favorite lens, my obsession with vintage comics, the way we both hated small talk but were terrible at avoiding it. It was easy, too easy, and that scared me. I wasn't used to this, someone who saw me, really saw me, and didn't flinch. But then he got a call. His face changed, the easy smile fading as he stepped outside to take it. When he came back, he was quieter, his eyes distant. "Everything okay?" I asked, trying to keep my voice light. "Yeah," he said, but it was a lie, and we both knew it. He didn't offer more, and I didn't push. Not then. That night, we ended up at my place, a cramped studio with too many plants and not enough space. Julian sprawled on my couch, flipping through one of my sketchbooks. "You're good," he said, holding up a drawing of a cityscape I'd done last year. "Why don't you show this stuff?" I shrugged, embarrassed. "It's just personal. Not for clients." He set the sketchbook down and looked at me. "Serious now. You don't have to hide, Ethan." "Not for me." I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to. But there was a part of me, maybe the part that still heard my mom's voice, or Connor's, or every person who'd ever made me feel like I wasn't enough, that held back. I changed the subject, asked about his photos, and he let me. But the air felt heavier, like we'd brushed against something we weren't ready to face. Over the next week, we fell into a rhythm. Coffee in the mornings, late-night walks along the waterfront, stolen kisses in doorways when the rain started to fall. Julian was a whirlwind, pulling me into his world of art and music and late-night adventures. But there were moments, phone calls he'd take outside, texts he'd read and not answer, where I saw cracks in his confidence. Something was haunting him, and I didn't know how to ask. One night, we were at a jazz club, the kind of place where the music feels like it's alive. Julian was quieter than usual, his fingers tapping restlessly on his glass. I reached for his hand, and he flinched not a lot, but enough. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice barely audible over the saxophone. He looked at me, his eyes raw. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "Be with someone. Not like this." My heart sank. "What do you mean?" He took a breath, like he was steadying himself. "There's someone, back in Oregon. Someone I left behind. I thought I could outrun it, but I can't." The words hit like a punch. I pulled my hand back, trying to keep my face neutral. "An ex?" He nodded, looking away. "His name's Ryan. We were together for 3 years. It ended badly, but he's sick. Ethan. Really sick. And I don't know what to do." I didn't know what to say. Part of me wanted to run, to protect myself from whatever this was. But another part, the part that couldn't stop thinking about Julian's laugh, his touch, the way he made me feel alive, wanted to stay. So I stayed. The next few days were a blur of doubt and longing. Julian didn't bring up Ryan again, but his shadow hung over us. I'd catch Julian staring at his phone, his jaw tight, and I'd wonder if he was texting him, if he was planning to leave. I hated how much it hurt, how fast I'd let myself fall. We kept seeing each other, though. He'd show up at my apartment with takeout, or I'd meet him at a gallery where he was scoping out a shoot. Every moment with him was electric, but now there was an undercurrent of fear. I started noticing things I hadn't before, the way he'd deflect questions about his past, the way he'd pull back when I got too close. I wanted to ask about Ryan, about what sick meant, but every time I tried, the words stuck in my throat. One afternoon, we were at Pike Place Market, weaving through the crowd, the air thick with the smell of fish and flowers. Julian was quieter than usual, his camera hanging and used around his neck. I bought us coffee, hoping to lighten the mood, but when I handed him his cup, he looked at me like he was about to say something big. Instead, he just said, "Thanks," and took a sip. We ended up on a bench by the water, the Space Needle looming in the distance. I couldn't take it anymore. "Julian," I said, my voice shaking, "what's going on with you?" "With Ryan." He didn't answer right away. He stared at the water, his fingers tight around his cup. "Ryan's got cancer," he said finally. "Stage 4. He doesn't have long." My stomach dropped. "I'm so sorry," I said, and I meant it, but there was a selfish part of me that wanted to know what it meant for us. "Are you going back to him?" Julian shook his head. "It's not like that. We're not together. But he was a big part of my life. Ethan. I left because things got messy, because I couldn't handle it. And now he's dying, and I feel like I owe him something." I didn't know what to say. I wanted to be the good guy, the one who understood, but all I could think was that I was losing him before I even had him. "Do you still love him?" I asked, hating myself for it. Julian looked at me, his eyes searching. "I don't know," he said. "I loved him once. But you're different. You make me want to be better." It should have felt good, but it didn't. It felt like a confession and a warning all at once. We sat there in silence, the weight of it pressing down on us, until he reached for my hand. His touch was gentle, but it burned. That night, I couldn't sleep. I kept replaying his words, wondering if I was just a rebound, a distraction from his past. I wanted to believe in us, in the way he looked at me, but doubt was a loud voice, and I'd never been good at shutting it up. The next day, Julian texted me to meet him at a small art gallery in Capitol Hill. When I got there, he was standing in front of a massive photograph black and white shot of a man's hands. calloused and worn, holding a single flower. "This is yours," he said, not looking at me. "Mine." I frowned, confused. "I took it thinking of you," he said. "The hands, they're strong, but they're gentle, too. Like you." My throat tightened. Nobody had ever done something like that for me. Not Connor. Not anyone. I wanted to say something, to tell him how much it meant, but all I could do was pull him into a hug. He held me back, his arms tight around me, and for a moment, I thought we could make it work. But then his phone buzzed. He pulled away, checked it, and his face fell. "It's Ryan's sister," he said. "He's in the hospital. It's bad." I nodded, my heart sinking. "Go," I said, because what else could I do? He looked at me, torn. "Ethan, just go," I said, softer this time. "He needs you." He left, and I stood there, staring at the photograph of the hands, wondering if I'd just let go of the one thing I'd been searching for. Julian was gone for 3 days. No texts, no calls, just silence. I threw myself into work, sketching logos until my hands cramped, but nothing could drown out the questions. Was he with Ryan? Was he coming back? Did I even have a right to care? When he finally showed up at my apartment, he looked like he hadn't slept. His eyes were red, his hair a mess, but he still managed a small smile when he saw me. "Can I come in?" he asked. I let him in, and we sat on my couch, the space between us feeling wider than it ever had. "How's Ryan?" I asked, because I had to. Julian rubbed his face, exhausted. "He's stable, for now. But it's not good. They're talking weeks. Maybe." I nodded, my chest tight. "And you? How are you?" He laughed, a bitter sound. "I don't know, Ethan. I feel like I'm being pulled in 100 directions. Ryan, my family, you." He trailed off, looking at me like he was scared of what I'd say. "Me?" I said, my voice sharper than I meant. "What about me?" He reached for my hand, but I pulled back. "I don't know how to do this," he said. "I want to be here, with you, but I feel like I'm betraying him. Like I'm betraying myself." I wanted to yell, to tell him he was being unfair, but I could see the pain in his eyes. He wasn't trying to hurt me. He was just lost. "What do you need?" I asked, forcing the words out. "From me. From this. What do you need?" He looked at me, his eyes wet. "I need you to not give up on me," he said. "Not yet." I didn't know if I could promise that. But I nodded, because I wasn't ready to let him go. The next week was a tightrope. Julian was back in Seattle, but he was different, distracted, quieter. We still spent time together, but it felt fragile, like one wrong move could break us. I tried to be patient, to give him space, but it was hard. Every time his phone buzzed, I braced myself for bad news. One night, we were at his loft, cooking dinner together. It was almost normal, laughing over burnt garlic bread, stealing bites of pasta before it was ready. But then he got another call, and when he came back, his face was pale. "Ryan's sister," he said. "He's asking for me." I froze, my fork halfway to my mouth. "Are you going?" He nodded. "I have to. He doesn't have anyone else." I wanted to argue, to tell him he didn't owe Ryan anything, but I couldn't. Not when I saw the guilt in his eyes. "Okay," I said. "Just come back." He kissed me, soft and slow, like he was trying to memorize me. "I will," he said. But when he left, I wasn't sure I believed him. Julian was gone for a week this time. I tried to keep busy work. Friends. Late night runs through the city, but nothing could fill the hole he'd left. I kept checking my phone, hoping for a text, a call, anything. But there was nothing. When he finally came back, he showed up at my door with a duffel bag and an apology in his eyes. "I'm sorry," he said before I could speak. "I didn't mean to disappear." I let him in, but I was guarded. "How's Ryan?" I asked, keeping my distance. Julian sat on my couch, his hands clasped tight. "He's not good. They're moving him to hospice soon." I stayed as long as I could, but I needed to come back. "To you." My heart twisted. I wanted to believe him, but I was tired of feeling like I was competing with a ghost. "Julian," I said, my voice steady, "I can't keep doing this. I can't keep waiting for you to decide if I'm enough." He stood, crossing the room in 2 steps, and took my face in his hands. "You are enough," he said, his voice fierce. "You're more than enough. I'm trying to figure out how to be here, with you, without feeling like I'm abandoning him." I pulled away, my eyes burning. "But you're not here." "Not really. And I don't know how to be with someone who's half somewhere else." He didn't have an answer. We stood there, the silence heavy, until he said, "I don't want to lose you, Ethan. Please." I wanted to say something brave, something final, but all I could do was nod. We spent the night together, but it wasn't the same. There was a distance between us, a crack that kept growing. The next few weeks were a strange dance of hope and heartbreak. Julian tried to be present, to show up for me, but Ryan's shadow was always there. I started pulling back, not because I wanted to, but because I had to protect myself. I stopped texting first, stopped inviting him over. And he noticed. One night, he showed up at my apartment unannounced, his eyes wild. "Why are you shutting me out?" he asked, his voice raw. "I'm not." I lied, but he saw through it. "Ethan, talk to me. Please." I took a deep breath, the words spilling out before I could stop them. "I'm scared." "Okay. I'm scared that you're going to leave, that you're going to choose him, that I'm just temporary." He stepped closer, his hands on my shoulders. "You're not temporary. You're the realest thing I've got." I wanted to believe him. I wanted it so badly it hurt. But I didn't know if I could. Everything changed the night Ryan died. Julian called me from Oregon, his voice broken. "He's gone," he said, and I could hear the tears he was trying to hold back. I wasn't there. I was on my way, but I was too late. I didn't know what to say. I wanted to comfort him, but I was still raw, still hurting. "I'm sorry," I said, and it felt so small. He came back to Seattle the next day, and when I saw him, he looked like a man who'd lost something he'd never get back. We didn't talk much that first night. I just held him, let him cry, let him be. It was the first time I felt like he needed me, really needed me, and it broke my heart. The days that followed were quiet. Julian threw himself into his work, shooting photos late into the night, barely sleeping. I tried to be there, to bring him coffee or drag him out for air, but he was distant, like he was carrying a weight I couldn't touch. One night, we were at his loft, the city lights spilling through the windows. He was sorting through photos, his hands shaking slightly. I sat next to him, close but not touching. "Talk to me," I said softly. He didn't look up. "I don't know how," he said. I keep thinking, if I'd stayed, maybe he wouldn't have been alone. "You couldn't have changed it," I said, hoping it was true. "You did what you could." He shook his head. I ran. Ethan. From him. From myself. And now I'm scared I'm going to do the same to you. My heart stopped. Are you? He finally looked at me. His eyes raw. I don't want to. But I don't know how to stay. Either. I reached for his hand, holding it tight. Then we figure it out, I said. Together. The next few months were a slow climb. Julian started opening up, bit by bit, about Ryan, about the guilt that had been eating him alive. I listened, not because it was easy, but because I loved him. I hadn't said it yet, but I felt it, deep and unshakable. We started building something real. We'd spend weekends exploring the city, finding hidden bookstores or hole-in-the-wall restaurants. He'd take photos of me when I wasn't looking, and I'd sketch him in my notebook, trying to capture the way his eyes lit up when he laughed. It wasn't perfect. There were still nights when he'd wake up shaking, or days when I'd doubt myself, but it was ours. One evening, we were back at the rooftop bar where it all started. The fairy lights were still there, the city still humming below us. Julian was different now, still sharp and confident, but softer, too, like he'd let go of something heavy. He reached for my hand, his thumb brushing over my knuckles. I love you, he said, out of nowhere, his voice steady. I froze, my heart pounding. I'd been waiting for those words, but hearing them felt like stepping off a cliff. I love you, too, I said, and it was true. He smiled, that secret smile I'd fallen for that first night. I'm not going anywhere, he said. Not this time. And for the first time, I believed him. We weren't perfect. We fought sometimes about my insecurity, about his tendency to shut down. But we talked, too, about the big stuff, the small stuff, the stuff that scared us both. I started showing my sketches, even had a small exhibit at a local gallery. Julian was there, cheering louder than anyone, his camera capturing every moment. Looking back, I think about that first night, when he asked me for a drink and moved closer until my whole body forgot how to say no. It wasn't just attraction, wasn't just a spark. It was the start of something bigger, something messy and beautiful and real. We'd both been running, from our pasts, from ourselves. But together, we found a place to stand still. And that, I think, is what love is, not the absence of fear, but the courage to stay, to choose each other, day after day, even when it's hard, even when it hurts, even when it's the scariest thing you've ever done.